Okay, in this video, we have a function and we want to find its inverse. Okay, we want to find the inverse function of this function, and this is absolutely a critical algebra skill that you need to understand. And inverse functions or functions and their inverse is a very, very important topic, and it's actually pretty involved. There's a lot of different things about this particular topic, and I'm not going to get into everything in this video because it's just, this is requires multiple different videos on this. Now, just as a heads up, if you're new to my YouTube channel, hopefully you'll consider subscribing, but I have a ton of videos on functions and inverse functions in my algebra playlist you can check out as follow-up to this particular video. What I really want to focus on for this video is how to find the inverse function. Okay, now of course we're assuming that this function has an inverse, and that's a separate question in and of itself because not all functions have an inverse. Again, the big topic, but this particular function does. And so if a function has an inverse, how do we find it? And then how do we verify that in fact that is the correct, that we have the right answer? So I want to go through that as well. And I'm going to get to all of this in just one second. But first, let me quickly introduce myself. My name is John. I'm the founder of TabletClass Math. I'm also a middle and high school math teacher. And over several years, I've constructed what I like to believe is one of the best online math help programs there is. Of course, I'll let you be the judge of that. You can check out my math help program by following the link in the description of this video. But basically, I have 100 plus different math courses, extremely comprehensive math courses ranging from pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2. I'm going to be launching pre-calculus here shortly. Very excited about that course. But I also do a lot in the area of test preparation. So if you're studying for the GED, SAT, ACT, high set exam, task exam, maybe the CLEP exam, maybe the AccuPlace or ALEX, maybe a teacher certification exam. All those exams and many others have a lot of math on them. And if you don't do well in the math section, you don't do well on the exam. So let me help you prepare. You can just go to my website again. The link is in the description. Check out my full course catalog. I should have what you're studying for. If I do not, drop me a line and I'll help you out the best I can. I also do a lot with independent learners like homeschoolers. I've been working with homeschoolers for a long time, many years. So I have a great homeschool learning system if you homeschool. And then obviously, I just, help those of you that are having a tough time in your math course and need some additional help. Now, if you're serious about learning math, okay, now if you're not serious, then, just keep doing what you're doing. But if you are serious about turning things around and really, doing well in mathematics, then you got to do this, okay? And over decades of teaching mathematics, one thing is apparent to me, crystal clear. Those students that work hard every day in class to take outstanding math notes almost always end up with these nice low grades that look like that. And their facial expressions are like generally something like that at the end of the year. Now, the reverse is true. Those students who are like, yeah, the teacher's not looking at me. I could check out my cell phone, see what's going on there. I could talk to my friends. I could do homework from another class. Look, oh, the teacher's looking at me, so let me write something down. Listen, teachers see more than you think. Plus, I did all these things way back in the good old 1980s, and my facial expression was like this, and my grades were like that. Okay, so I know what it's like to be distracted. There's tons of distractions. That's not the distractions aren't going to go away. Okay, the only thing that can change is you and your ability to focus. All right, and note taking is the activity that you can do to keep yourself focused because focus is key. If you can focus, you're going to be highly successful. If you are not focused, you're going to end up looking like this, and we want to avoid that. So work on your notes, right? Now, in the meantime, if you don't have any notes, well, you can use my notes to study from. So I offer pre-algebra, algebra 1, geometry, algebra 2, and trigonometry. You can find the links to those notes in the description of this video. Okay, so functions and their inverse, huge topic in algebra and beyond. So we're talking about functions, all right? This is just a huge topic right here. But, look at the root word here, functions, fun, okay? Just remember that, functions are fun. And some of you are probably saying, okay, Mr. YouTube math teacher, just stick to math. Don't try to be a comedian. Listen, I got to try at least, right? But functions are huge, okay? We need to know what is a function. We have to be able to define a function. We need to know the different types of functions, okay? We need to know if a function has an inverse, all right? Does it have an inverse? All right, you can have a function, but some functions do not have inverses. And then if it does have an inverse, how do we find that function inverse? And then how do we even verify a function inverse? And then, by the way, too, what are the properties of a function and its inverse? Okay, well, there's graphical properties, there's things about the domain and range, etc., etc. So again, there's a lot going on here. I teach this thoroughly in like my algebra course. Again, I have multiple videos on this in my YouTube channel under my algebra playlist, probably my algebra 2 playlist as well. But if you just go through my playlist and my algebra, probably the majority of the stuff is going to be my algebra playlist. I talk about all these various subtopics. But again, functions is a huge topic in mathematics, and you really got to embrace learning this. Okay. All right. Now let's get into specifically how to find the inverse function. Okay. Now here is our problem. Right. This is f of x is equal to 3x plus 1, and we want to find this thing right here. So this notation is the notation for the inverse of this function f. So I have function f. I want to find its inverse. So this is what I want, this little like -1 up here. Okay. All right. So here is the procedure. Here's the steps. Now the first thing you need to know is that f of x, okay, well we have 3x plus 1. This f of x right here in any function, all right, is equal to y. Okay, so y is equal to f of x. So this is a linear function. This is the way we would actually, linear function. This is the way we would pronounce this, or the technical description of this thing right here is a linear function because I'm using a function notation. But if I replace this f of x with a y, because y is equal to f of x, all right, this is a linear equation. Okay, linear equation, linear function, basically the same thing, just different notation. If I use this notation, I'm calling it a function. If I use the y, I'm calling it an equation. Okay, but this is important, okay, because obviously we're dealing with function notation here, but we need to know that y is equal to f of x. So this is going to be our first step. Okay, our first step is to replace the f of x with y. Okay, so that's step number 1. And you could just write this down. Of course, this is in my notes, algebra notes, and then I teach this obviously super thoroughly in my algebra course in my Math Help program. All right, so that's step number 1. Replace this f of x with the y. Now, step number 2, okay, once we have this function written as an equation, is to replace the x and y, switch them. So the y is going to go into the x position, and the x is going to go into the y position. All right, so what's the result of doing that? Well, this is going to be x, 3y plus 1. You see this here? All right, this is exactly what you need to do. So step number 1, replace f of x with y. Step number 2, reverse or flip the x and, well, yeah, I guess switch the x and y. Okay, that's the probably best way to describe that. Okay, so if you're with me so far, then that's excellent. Now, what's step number 3? Step number 3 is to solve for y. Okay, now we have to solve for y. And how does that look like? Well, I have x is equal to 3y plus 1. Remember, in an equation, the left is equal to the right, and I could switch the right is equal to the left. So I have x is equal to 3y plus 1. You could write it this way, 3y plus 1 is equal to x. Now, because I'm solving for y, I want my y on my left-hand side of the equation. I'm going to just kind of put this side on this, put the right-hand side on the left-hand side and the left-hand side on the right-hand side. Okay, you could do this in algebra. It's not harmful in any way. Okay, so let's go ahead and continue to work on solving for y. So I have 3y plus 1 is equal to x. I'm going to subtract 1 here from both sides of the equation. And when I do that, I get 3y is equal to x minus 1. Okay, to solve for y, I need to get y by itself. I have 3y. I want y, so I have to divide everything by 3. Okay, so I'm going to divide this by 3, divide this by 3, and divide this by 3. Okay, and when I do that, I will have y is equal to 1/3 x. X over 3 is the same thing as 1/3 x minus 1/3. This, okay, is almost well, this is effectively the answer, but this is in an equation form. This is our inverse, but let's put it into function format. So this right here is the inverse function. This is the inverse right here, okay? So f of negative 1x is equal to 1/3 x minus 1/3. So this function, its inverse happens to be the original problem, okay? All right, so their inverse is one another. So this function's inverse is down there, and that function's inverse is up here. Now, how can we verify this? Well, this is extremely important to do, and you're going to be asked to do this in your algebra class. Okay, I think I said algebra. I need another cup of coffee. Anyways, algebra. Anyways, so let's get to back to the problem. All right, so we have our function, and now we have what we think is our inverse. Okay, but how can we verify this? Well, we need to use this little definition right here. Just kind of just draw a little box around. This is the definition of an inverse function, and it looks pretty complicated. So what it states, though, is that you need to know a little bit about function composites. So you need to know like f of g of x, composite functions, stuff like that. So if you're not familiar with composite functions, this typically gives students a little bit of tough time. I have tons of videos, again, in my algebra playlist on my channel. So make sure you know how to do a composite function or you're not going to know how to do this. But basically, what this is saying is that here, if I plug in, let me erase this here so we can see this a little better. This right here is saying if I plug in the inverse function, this is the inverse function, into the f function, my original function, if I plug in my inverse function into this, okay, or if I plug in my original function into my inverse function, that's that notation, you're going to get x, okay? X will be your final answer. Effectively, inverse functions kind of undo one another, all right? So let's just take an example, and this is how you verify that you have, in fact, the right function. So let's do this one right here. Let's plug in the inverse function into the original function, okay? Meaning, right here, here's the original function. When I plug in the inverse function, all right, I'm going to replace this x with the inverse function, this stuff right here, okay? So I'm going to replace this x right there with the inverse function because they're both equal to one another, right? And then we'll simplify and we should get an x. So let's go ahead and do that now. So f of f negative 1, okay? So I'm plugging in the inverse function into the original function. And what do I have? I have 3 times x, but not x. It's this stuff, right? Right there, plus 1. Okay, you got to make sure you can, do this algebra. This can be a little confusing. So 3 times, I'm plugging in the inverse function, 3 plus whatever the inverse function was this. I know I'm being redundant because I want you to make sure you get this, plus 1. Okay, now let's simplify. All right, so if I distribute this 3 to this term, the 3's here go away. I'm left with 1x. And then 3 to this is the 3's go away. I'm left with negative 1. 3 times negative 1/3 is negative 1 plus 1. Oh, look at this right here. Negative 1 plus 1, that is 0. I'm left with x, as I should have with this particular, definition, okay, of a function and its inverse. And if I did it the other way, I would also get x. So typically in a algebra course, you're going to be asked, you're going to be given a function, and then your teacher is going to say, okay, give me the inverse function, and then they're going to want you to verify, which is this stuff right here, okay? Now, if you got this problem right all on your own, then I must give you a nice happy face, a nice mohawk like we used to have back in the 1980s. And nobody has those mohawks today. I mean, at least, maybe I don't get out enough. But yes, in the 1980s, we used a lot of hairspray. I didn't have a mohawk. Okay, a lot of my friends did, but I did have those flat tops. That's another haircuts that you don't see too much, but that was a cool haircut. But anyways, I don't even have enough hair for that haircut, unfortunately. That's what happens when you get older. But if you got this problem right, that's excellent. Okay, let me give you 100% as well and a couple of stars. You got to know how to do this stuff in algebra, okay? But more than that, you got to tie this into other concepts, right? All we did right here was find, we just found the inverse. That's what we did, okay? And we verified it. But what does that mean? When do we know if a function has an inverse or not? Okay, this has something to do with what we call the horizontal line test, all right, and vertical line test, horizontal line test, type of functions, rational functions, radical functions, quadratic functions. We have to know the definition of a function. Okay, you should know these things. Then various properties of functions. I can graph these two functions on the xy plane, and they're going to be symmetric along the y equals x axis. So there's a ton of stuff that I'm not going over here that you still need to know. Okay, so if you're not paying attention in class and you're only picking up a little bit of this, when you go to take your test, you're going to end up looking like this person right here. You're going to get these type of grades. There's just too many details to learn in mathematics. So hopefully, if you follow my guidance, okay, you're going to do very well. And if this video helps you out in some small way or big way, please consider smashing that like button. That definitely helps me out. And then, of course, I would love to have you as a subscriber. Okay, I've been on YouTube for over 10 years, have 1,000 plus videos on my channel, basic to advanced math, all there for you. My goal, my passion is to try to teach math in a clear and understandable way. Everyone could do well in math. If you're doing your part, you're working hard at it, you're going to your teacher, getting extra help. Beyond that, there's a ton of great resources out there. For example, if you like my teaching style, I have a ton of videos there for you. Of course, my best math help will be in my math help program, but go on the offense, okay? Take the initiative and get the help that you need. You got to figure it out. Take some responsibility, and if you do so, you're going to end up with outstanding grades. Okay. All right. So with that being said, I definitely wish you all the best in your mathematics adventures. Thank you for your time, and have a great day.